Welcome to today's video on refinancing traps. We're focusing on how short-term teaser rates and temporary buydowns can look attractive up front but end up costing far more over time. First, I'll set the stage with the big idea. If a lender offers a low first-year rate that jumps later, you must examine how much principal and fees are added to your loan and how long you'll pay interest on them. Next, we'll unpack myths like so-called skipped payments, closing costs hidden in your new balance, and escrow refunds that feel like free money but aren't. By the end, you'll know how to run the numbers, avoid costly assumptions, and protect your long-term financial health. Here's our agenda to keep things clear. First, we'll contrast marketing promises with the financial reality. Then, we'll break down teaser rates and how they escalate. After that, we'll learn a step-by-step way to compute true costs and break-even timelines. Next, we'll expose the myth of skipped payments and the escrow refund illusion. Then, we'll discuss why relying on future rate drops is risky. We'll test your understanding with quick quizzes, highlight key red flags to watch for, and wrap up with a short disclaimer and practical next steps. To begin, let's look at how the pitch differs from reality. Lenders may promote a low initial rate, like 3.8% for the first year, with the expectation it will jump later, for example to 5.8% or higher. Meanwhile, closing costs and other fees often get rolled into your loan balance, increasing principal and the interest you pay for years. This can create a payment shock when the rate adjusts, and some borrowers end up refinancing again, paying yet more fees and extending the debt timeline. Instead of following this cycle, the better approach is to run a true cost analysis comparing actual dollars saved during the teaser period against total added costs and long-term interest. Next, let's decode teaser rates. A common pitch might feature a first-year rate of 3.8% that increases to 5.8% afterward. This temporary buydown can be marketed as immediate savings, but those savings are not permanent. Importantly, the fees that make this lower rate possible are frequently rolled into your loan, which increases your principal from day one. While a lower first-year payment feels good, that feeling can obscure the reality of higher lifetime interest charges due to the larger balance and potentially higher subsequent rates. Now let's visualize the decision pathway. We begin with the question of whether to refinance. One branch leads to teasers or hybrid loans, and another to plain fixed-rate loans. On the teaser path, you must evaluate several checkpoints. First, determine whether closing costs will be added to your principal. Second, calculate the actual dollars saved during the first year at the reduced rate. Third, compare that savings directly against total closing costs. Fourth, verify how escrow for taxes and insurance will be handled so you are not surprised later. Fifth, confirm you can afford the payment once the rate resets. Finally, ask whether the plan assumes you will refinance again to make it viable. If any of these checks fail, the flowchart leads to either not refinancing or waiting and negotiating. Only if the savings meet or exceed the costs, the post-reset payment is affordable, and the plan does not rely on a second refinance should you proceed. Moving on, here is a practical method to run the numbers. First, identify your current mortgage balance and interest rate. Second, obtain an itemized list of closing costs and verify whether these will be paid out of pocket or added to your principal. Third, compute the first-year interest for both scenarios, the current loan and the proposed refinance, using the new balance if costs are rolled in. Fourth, calculate the dollar difference in that first year and compare it directly against the total closing costs. This is the most important apples-to-apples comparison. Fifth, estimate your payment after the teaser period ends at the higher rate and test whether that payment is comfortably affordable. Sixth, clarify how escrow for property taxes and insurance will be handled, including whether you'll receive a refund and how the new loan will fund the next payments. Seventh, only proceed if the immediate savings exceed the total costs, the post-reset payment is affordable, and the plan does not depend on a second refinance. Let's ground this with a simplified illustration. Suppose you owe $400,000 at 6.5%. If you refinance into a teaser of 3.8% for the first year and roll $20,000 of closing costs into the principal, your new balance becomes approximately $420,000. Year 1 interest on the old loan would be roughly $26,000. Year 1 interest on the new loan would be about $15,960. That appears to save around $10,040 in the first year. However, you spent or added $20,000 in closing costs to get there, leaving you nearly $10,000 behind when comparing costs to first-year savings alone. Additionally, you increased your principal by $20,000, on which you will pay interest for many years. This table is illustrative only. Your numbers will differ, and you should perform or verify detailed calculations for your situation. Now let's compare the illusion versus reality with escrow refunds. The illusion is that the escrow refund is free money, that future property taxes and insurance are somehow covered, and that the refund materially improves the economics of the refinance. In reality, the refund is your own money being returned from the old escrow account. Your taxes and insurance are still due and must be funded either by you or by the new loan's escrow. The refund does not offset or erase closing costs. You still need to compare the actual dollar savings to the actual dollar costs. Continuing on, let's address the myth of skipped payments. When you hear that you can skip a couple of payments, what often happens is that those payments are simply financed into your new loan balance. You are not skipping anything, you are borrowing them. Because they are added to principal, you pay interest on those months for a very long time. This effectively elongates the true term of your mortgage and increases your total debt immediately. The headline of skipping payments can be misleading if you do not examine how it is funded. To visualize the economics, imagine a pie chart with illustrative proportions. A large slice represents closing costs required to secure the teaser. A smaller slice shows the first-year savings that borrowers often focus on. A final slice represents the extra interest you may pay over time because your principal is higher after adding costs to the balance. The exact numbers will vary by borrower, but the picture emphasizes that first-year savings rarely tell the full story. Next, let's discuss future rate speculation. If a loan only makes sense because you plan to refinance again before the rate jumps, that is a red flag. Every additional refinance brings another round of closing costs, which can erode or eliminate savings. Instead, decisions should be driven by current math and long-term stability, not optimistic forecasts that may not materialize. Quiz time. The question is a skip payments benefit actually free in a refinance? Option A, no. It is typically financed into your new principal, increasing long-term interest. Option B, yes. The lender waives the payments permanently. Option C, only if your escrow refund is large enough. Option D, always, because closing costs are zero. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section. The correct answer is A. In most cases, so-called skipped payments are funded by adding those amounts to your new principal, which increases the interest you pay over time. This feature is not free, and it can contribute to higher total costs across the life of the loan. Here's a second question. If closing costs add $20,000 to your balance, but the year one interest savings are only about $8,000, what is the prudent takeaway? Option A, it's worth it because your payment drops. Option B, not worth it. Costs exceed savings and you will pay interest on the extra $20,000. Option C, do it if you plan to refinance again soon. Option D, worth it if you get an escrow refund. You may pause the video now to consider your answer. We will cover the answer next. The correct answer is B. If closing costs exceed the first-year savings, and those costs are added to your principal, the refinance is not justified by the numbers. Lower monthly payments alone are not sufficient if they come at the cost of a larger balance and higher lifetime interest. Before we wrap, here are key red flags. First, the deal depends on rolling large fees into your principal. Second, the plan assumes you will refinance again soon. Third, so-called skipped payments are actually financed into the loan. Fourth, an escrow refund is presented as if it were new money. Fifth, the lender does not present clear break-even math. These indicators suggest you should slow down and reassess. Important disclaimer. This content is educational and general in nature. It is not financial, legal, or tax advice. Mortgage terms vary, and your circumstances are unique. Before taking any action, consult qualified professionals and verify all calculations with your lender and an independent advisor. In summary, teaser rates can obscure higher lifetime costs. You should compare the first-year savings in dollars directly against the total closing costs. Do not rely on a second refinance to make the numbers work. because each refinance brings more fees. Remember that escrow refunds are your money and that taxes and insurance remain due. Only proceed if the math works based on current savings, the total cost picture, and affordability after the reset. Thanks for watching. If you found this useful, please like the video, share it with someone who is considering refinancing, and subscribe for more clear numbers-first breakdowns. Post your questions and experiences in the comments so we can analyze real-world cases in future episodes.